Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching World Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Amid the ongoing peace talks on ending the Russia-Ukraine war, US President Donald Trump has expressed hope. He has said that good chance of reaching a Russia-Ukraine peace deal. As Ukrainian delegations wrapped up Ukraine peace talks in the United States, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that talks were productive, but more work is to be done on the truce proposal. US President Donald Trump has confirmed reports of telephonic conversations with Venezuelan leader Maduro. However, Trump did not reveal further details. This call comes amid escalating tensions between both the countries. Venezuelan leader accuses the United States of wanting to take over its oil resources. Venezuela has also asked OPEC Plus to show solidarity in the face of what it considers an escalation that could endanger Venezuela's oil production. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has dismissed US President Donald Trump's threat to exclude Pretoria from next year's G20 summit, reaffirming South Africa's status as founding member of the group. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and Turkish counterpart Hakan Fidan has urged Middle East countries to make joint efforts against alleged Israeli aggressions. The death toll from floods and deadly landslides in Indonesia has now risen to 500. Nearly 508 people are reportedly missing. This brings the death toll from flooding across Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka to more than 1,000 people. Polls have closed in Kyrgyzstan and the preliminary results show that allies of Kyrgyzstan's President Sadir Japarov have swept the board on the snap parliamentary election. Now for this hour, we start with the breaking news. The death toll from floods and landslides in Indonesia has now risen to 502 people, with more than 500 people still missing, the National Disaster Agency has reported today. Severe weather has battered Southeast Asia in recent weeks across Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka. The combined death toll from floods now exceeds 2,000 people. Rescue efforts continue as authorities search for survivors and assess the widespread damage. Now we move on to Middle East. Iranian Foreign Minister Said Abbas Araghchi and his Turkish counterpart Hakan Fidan has emphasized that Middle Eastern countries must work together to counter Israel's aggressions. Speaking at a joint press conference in Tehran, Araghchi has highlighted violations of the Gaza ceasefire and Israel's recent attacks on Lebanon and Syria, saying these actions threaten regional stability. Let's listen in.
نقض مکرر آتش‌بس در غزه و حملات اخیر رژیم صهیونیستی به لبنان و سوریه نشان می‌دهد که این رژیم نقشه‌های بزرگتری برای بی‌ثبات کردن منطقه دارد. وظیفه کشورهای منطقه است که جلوی تجاوزات و توسعه‌طلبی رژیم صهیونیستی از جمله در سوریه و لبنان را سد نمایند.
Fidan has called on Israel to halt strikes on Palestinian territories and criticized what he described as Israel's expanding aggressions across West Asia, urging the international community to act. The two diplomats have also discussed Iran's nuclear issue, with Fidan affirming Turkey's support for resolving differences through dialogue and international law. Now for this discussion, we welcome Peter Baum. He's an editor at Weekly Blitz, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us again. Good to see you. Peter, now, what's your reaction? As I don't recall, I don't recall Turkey taking or backing up Iran in such publicly like this.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting development, but not unexpected. And we have to look on this of what's going on in the wider Islamic world. Now, clearly, Iran, through suffering a very heavy military defeat, through being isolated politically, through harsh economic conditions brought about by the water crisis in Iran, and now I gather they have real environmental pollution problems in Iran. And the Iranian rial is now at a record low against the dollar, is suffering tremendous isolation politically and economically. And Turkey, Iran are hoping, are going to help them during this period of economic hardship. But Erdogan's plan is something different. Erdogan, because of the incredible military and political success that Turkey have had over the last couple of years, and we'll go on to that and I'll exemplify that in a second, Erdogan sees himself as being the martyr of the Islamic world. He wants to be what Saddam Hussein of Iraq tried and failed to be. He wants to be what General Nasser of Egypt tried and failed to be. He wants to be what the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran tried and has failed to be. He wants to be the figurehead that unites and leads the Muslim world together. If we were talking 2 years ago, Turkey would not have been in the picture, and Iran would have been the main the main Islamic nation that was leading this effort to thwart Israel's military successes. But Iran is in no position to do so. But Turkey and Erdogan, because of the success they've had in removing the Syrian regime under Assad and imposing their own friendly regime, because of the success they've had in slaughtering and defeating the Kurds, the PKK, militarily, feel emboldened. And because Turkey is a member of NATO, she feels very emboldened. So the Turkish-Iranian dialogue, let's say, with common ground to demonize Israel, will gain some traction for Turkey in the Arab world, and the Arab Muslim world, I should say, whereas Iran's role is rather more I'm with you, Turkey, can you help me, because we're really in trouble, and any friend we have in the Muslim world, especially one as strong as you, may help our position domestically. So that's how I think this recent dialogue between the two nations should be seen, to enhance Turkey's position and to just give the Iranians a pat on the head to say, we won't let you down, we'll try and help you if we can. But of course they won't, because the Turkey and Iran really have very little in common from a religious perspective, or even from an ideological perspective.
And thank you for sharing that history and why you think so about this, your reasoning. Do you think that U.S. will anytime soon be alert about Turkey backing Iran like this?
Okay, so the one thing we do know is that Trump is very upset with NATO's defense spending and NATO's position in standing up to Russia, the European NATO countries, I should say. But the US is also very, very anti-Iran. And I think the US administration will see through the Turkey-Iranian dialogue, as I've expressed to you. Iran no longer poses a threat militarily to the US or Israel as she once did to pre-October the 7th, because her proxies have all been heavily defeated, although not completely disarmed, as we know. And economically, Iran is in no position to be a threat to the global order, because domestically she is having real problems. There are protests in the streets. Some senior IRGC commanders have already deserted. We know that her nuclear scientists have been eliminated, and therefore her nuclear ambitions must have been even more thwarted. So I think that Trump will see this as Turkey being almost an ally in this respect to even more dilute the Iranian threat. I think Iran's position is that she needs allies in the region. She needs to see herself as being politically still influential, and a dialogue with Erdogan, who is the strongman at the moment of the Muslim world, will help for a short period Iran's domestic base.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Peter Baum for joining us today and sharing that insight all the way from London. Now we move on to South America. Venezuela's National Assembly has said that it will launch a special commission to investigate deadly U.S. strikes on suspected drug trafficking boats. The announcement came from congressional leader Jorge Rodriguez. He has said that the probe will examine a report that U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered all people aboard one boat killed during a September strike, followed by a second attack on survivors. Rodriguez also said that the investigation will be rigorous and deep, with the country's prosecutor's office involved.
Nosotros, en el mismo momento en que conformemos a la Comisión Especial el día de mañana en la sesión extraordinaria de la Asamblea Nacional, también vamos a activar, a través de los mecanismos que tiene la Asamblea Nacional según sus prerrogativas constitucionales, vamos a activar la acción de la Fiscalía General de la República a fin de que la Fiscalía General de la República también tome cartas en el asunto respecto a los crímenes que se han cometido contra venezolanos y contra latinoamericanos en el Mar Caribe. También vamos a pedir una reunión al gobierno bolivariano para, junto con la Gobernación del Estado Sucre, establecer las estrategias de apoyo a los familiares de las personas, de los venezolanos asesinados en estas ejecuciones extrajudiciales.
The strikes are part of a broader U.S. campaign in the region. President Nicolas Maduro denies any involvement in drug trafficking and accuses Washington of seeking regime change to control Venezuela's oil reserves. Now for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General Siddharth Karji. He's an international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Siddharth Karji, for joining us again. Good to see you. Siddharth Karji, you mentioned before that you see this as like Venezuela's or U.S. aiming or motives being Venezuela's oil depot. And now Venezuelan president is also saying the same. What strategic objectives might the U.S. be pursuing by publicly now revealing a phone call? He has revealed a phone call with Maduro while simultaneously escalating its rhetoric and pressure. How could Trump's ambiguous statements from today affect the situation with Venezuela now?
Ashok, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show. Although your speech, your articulation, so getting broken, yet I can make out the spirit and the sense of the question. In my opinion, whatever is happening between USA, Donald Trump and Maduro, Venezuela, there is one hidden agenda which is gradually going to manifest into limelight. That hidden agenda is that Maduro's lifeline is numbered. He is going to be replaced very soon. What is not catching the attention of the public is the CIA modules which are operating inside the capital of Venezuela, as also a couple of the provinces nearby. Venezuela is not a very big country. It's around 1,400 kilometers by 1,200 kilometers with a coastline border of 2,800 kilometers. There is a mountain range also close to the coastline. But that apart, the moot issue on which you have framed your question, which I have understood, is firstly the relevance of the deep investigation which the Venezuela National Assembly is insisting on the US boat strike. It is not one, it is not two. There are a number of them which have taken place towards the eastern Caribbean Sea, and there are large number of people who have been killed based on the suspicion. There is no credible evidence which has been produced by the US Armed Forces, but they claim that they are suspected drug peddlers or cartels. So therefore, they have neutralized one after another. Total number, I think, as per the latest figure, is more than 83 people who have been killed, which is questionable. So any country worth its name with self-esteem has to actually ask and question firstly about the intention and objective. Secondly, about the veracity based on which an operation of this nature is being carried out, and punitive offensive strikes are being addressed to kill innocent people. As far as Venezuela is concerned, they are innocent. They are not indulging in drug peddling, so or drug cartel. So therefore, there is a dichotomy, and in order to address the issue, let the consensus emerge in Venezuela. So my take on the whole issue is that even if there is a consensus emerging, which may lead to challenging the actions by USA, Venezuela can do very little. They have got the support, some kind of a tacit support from China, some kind of a resources coming from Russia, but that is not good enough. It is the backyard of America. America will continue to do by virtue of its strength and military might so as to secure a base in the backyard. And therefore, all these actions are being taken or undertaken by the USA Armed Forces so as to generate pressure on Maduro, and they have already got somebody in the mind, and that person may soon be replacing Maduro. So therefore, Maduro is going to take a tough call whether he should continue or he should surrender. There have been telephone calls. I am given to understand through my source and my friends around that Donald Trump directly or indirectly has hinted, you step down, so that his man goes up in power and the USA continues to have a puppet government in Venezuela, thereby throwing open the oil field and the other activities which USA wants to carry out. Back to you, Asuma.
Thank you so much for sharing that insight. Major General, so was there any time or before Venezuela's current government, Maduro's government, was it giving US these kind of deals that US wants again? And what do you think, to what extent could these mixed messaging from the US administration, I mean publicly, fuel miscalculations or Caracas, potentially increasing the chances of unintended escalation between the two countries?
There is always a danger of escalation of any conflict taking place anywhere in the world. Like, for example, Russia-Ukraine started, everyone thought it would come to an end within 7 or maximum 15 days. Now it's going to be 4 years. Same is the case with Hamas and Israel. If this conflict actually takes off, my sense and my take, being a military man, is that the conflict between USA and Venezuela will be characterized by an escalatory matrix which will be dominated by the USA force. When I say dominating the escalatory matrix, what it means is that they will have an entry point to trigger or to commence the conflict, and they will have an exit point to pull back and wind up the conflict, or call it that the conflict is over. Okay, so it will going to be a very short window. I do not foresee escalation of any kind of conflict taking place beyond the domination of USA. However, there is always a fear that all these Latin America countries, they have the gang warfare taking place, insurgency is in rife, and it may start assuming the kind of insurgency which is not desirable, with high inflation rates, economic turbulence, high debts to China, and almost the country, everything has been given on a platter to China, and USA doesn't want, it wants to push back China. One of the hidden primary agenda of USA to get into this country or the backyard is to give a pushback to China so as to retain the erstwhile status quo ante of a superpower which USA enjoyed in 20th century. It no longer enjoys now. Be it call it Venezuela or Colombia, or go down south to Peru or Chile or Argentina, any country in Latin America today, they have a very dominant footprint of China in terms of the BRI, in terms of the socio-economic development, education, healthcare, etc., etc. So therefore, I do not see any kind of escalation of conflict taking place. It will be a very calibrated entry and exit from the conflict. That is as far as my assessment goes.
Do you think U.S. undermined China's shadow or China's maybe China's relationship with these South American countries? As you earlier mentioned, this is the backyard of U.S., not China, but do you think U.S. underestimated that?
Again, a great question, Asuma. Fantastic compliments to you. Yes, it did underestimate the capability of China, but in the same breath, allow me to qualify my statement by saying, China at no cost, at no time, will undertake any kind of a kinetic warfare against any opponent. China believes and practices, it is preaching and practicing the theory of winning a war without fighting one. And how is it doing? It is doing what in 20th century, the complete geopolitical dominance was characterized by, the global order was dominated by the geopolitics. And that's how, applying the theory and principles of geopolitics, USA was successfully, it managed to disintegrate Soviet Union. That was the primary aim in 20th century. In 21st century, because of evolving dynamics, the geopolitics of the global order has gradually gravitated towards geoeconomics. China has got trade with almost all the countries in the world, and most of the countries in the world, out of let's say 192 or 193 countries in the United Nations, more than 100 countries in the world have got trade with China. Almost 75 to 80% of these countries are running trade deficit with China. That means China is having trade surplus, including countries like USA, countries like India, and there are many countries in the Europe as also Africa and Latin America. So therefore, what it brings me to say is that it is by dominant cycle which China is going to apply. By geoeconomics, it is going to win the war and succumb forces like USA to subdue them in due course of time, like the way it has weaponized the critical minerals and the rare earth element, and thereby making its negotiations tough and hard with USA, and is able to win over as per the national interest of China when it comes to making negotiations.
Yes, indeed. Unfortunately, we're running out of time for this discussion, but I would like to thank Major General Sudhakarji for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump has told reporters that he has made his choice for the next chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Speaking from Air Force One, he has declined to reveal the name. Let's listen into what he has shared.
What about extending the
Fed chair? Are you any closer on that right now?
I know who I'm going to pick. Yeah.
Oh,
tell
us.
Kevin Hassett. I'm not telling you. We'll be announcing it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Meanwhile, White House Economic Advisor Kevin Hassett has said that he would be happy to serve as the next federal chairman if selected by President Donald Trump. Hassett's comments follow reports from U.S. media outlets last week indicating that he has emerged as a front-runner to succeed current chairman Jerome Powell, whose term is to set to end next year.
First of all, President Trump has a whole bunch of great candidates, and I think any one of them would be a big trade up from where we are. But then once it became clear that the president's getting closer to make a decision, the markets really celebrated. Interest rates went down. We had one of our best Treasury auctions ever. And so I think that the market expects that there's going to be a new person at the Fed, and they expect that President Trump's going to pick a new one. And if he picks me, I'll be happy to serve.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General Sudhakarji. He's an international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for staying with us. Now, looking at this news, to what extent does the selection of a federal chair become a political signal domestically and even internationally? And how might it impact U.S. relations with global economic partners now?
Great. If I have understood your question, Asoma,
Yes.
basically the challenge before United States of America today, as far as the Fed governors are concerned, is basically two issues. One is the inflation. They had targeted 2% was the highest. It is gone beyond that. And the second challenge, which is related to the Fed governor, which he has to handle, is that the standard and the value of dollar is dipping. He has to do something to arrest the dropping or the declining value of the dollar. These are the two primary predominant factors based on which Donald Trump has to take a call. So out of the 5 names which you have given, I suppose you have pointedly asked about who is the preferred choice. As per my assessment, out of 5 gentlemen, these are very, very competitive people who have got hands down experience on different aspects of running the federal governor's appointment. Like the first name that I have is Chris Waller, second is Michelle Bowner, third one is the former Fed governor who is the most popular. Out of my index which I have tabulated, it shows that Mr. Walsh, Kevin Walsh is the most popular. He is the most competitive personality out of all the 5, who is overshadowing all others by virtue of his experience on ground, hands down experience, and also wisdom. The third one is NEC Director Kevin. The fourth one is Blacklock head. He is Rich Rader. These are the names I have, unless you have some different names.
Yes.
Out of these 5 names, one name is standing out as far as my assessment is concerned, which is likely to be declassified very soon. And that name which I have indicated is Mr. Walsh. And going by the previous experience and his analysis as to how did these two issues, inflation and the dipping value of the dollar, I have heard a couple of his articulations. I think by far he is the best choice to be the Fed governor of USA, which Donald Trump can lay his hand on and make a choice. Back to you, Asuma.
Yes, thank you, and very interesting, Major General, for sharing that. We do have some differences here, but we will be eyeing that. Thank you very much. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, tension is rising at the Chile-Peru border, where a group of migrants have been strained for days after Peru deployed soldiers and police to seal its southern frontier. Officials say the move comes as migrants attempt to flee Chile following threats from far-right presidential frontrunner Jose Antonio Cast, who has vowed to deport undocumented migrants within months if elected. Peruvian authorities report a sudden spike in people rushing to the Chacaluta crossing near Arica, many now stuck in limbo, unable to enter Peru or return to Chile. Among them is Cecilia, an Ecuadorian mother who spent nearly 5 days at the border, saying she's running out of money and desperate to get home to her children. Now for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General Sudhakarji. He's an international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for staying with us. How might this rise of far-right political rhetoric in Chile influence migration flows, which already is influencing, and bilateral relationship with Peru?
Yeah, a great question again. You see, for that one has to understand a couple of issues. Firstly, the expanding sphere of influence of China in the Latin America. Secondly, what is happening in Venezuela? There has been a huge, large scale migration of Venezuelans into country like Chile. And thirdly, we need to understand the existing or the preceding government in Chile is to accommodate these Venezuelans. There are hundreds of them waiting in Venezuela. They are trying to flee. Why they are trying to flee is because the far right-wing candidate Jose Antonio Cast, now having shown the victorious signs of presidency, he is a right-wing, far right-wing candidate, and going by the past actions of him, it is quite evident that he is going to come down very heavily on the Venezuelans, and Venezuelans are not finding it convenient to actually immigrate or re-migrate back to any other country, because if you see the map between Peru and Chile, it's a very narrow, to the southern borders of Peru, it's a very narrow border at the place that you said is Chacaluta border complex with Chile. What has happened is there are far and few crossing places, and they have closed all the crossing places. They have deployed large number of troops to stop the irregular migration taking place. So because the migrants are so many, it is becoming virtually unmanageable, and there is a chaotic situation which is developing in Chile itself because of the fear of the far right candidate Jose Antonio coming down heavily or cracking down heavily on the Venezuelan migrants back to whichever country they wish to go. Now, because of this issue,
Yes.
it is also giving, driving factors like the gang warfare, the insurgency in slow movement, also transaction of drugs taking place, illegal weapons are also slowly, gradually getting inroads into the country. So the law and order situation along the border between Chile and Peru is subject to lots of vulnerability, which they have to be watched out for. Otherwise, it may go out of hand and beyond control of the Chilean government. Back to you, Asoma.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Major General Surakarji for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to China. A fortnight before China's National Memorial Day for the victims of the Nanjing massacre, families of the victims have gathered at the Memorial Hall in Nanjing, the capital of Jiangsu province, to commemorate their loved ones. According to government data, another 8 survivors of the Nanjing massacre have passed away this year, leaving only 24 people registered survivors still alive. Survivors and families of victims paid tribute before a wailing wall outside the Memorial Hall of the victims in Nanjing. They bowed, laid flowers, and observed a moment of silence in front of the wall, which bears the names of more than 10,000 people who were killed 88 years ago. Let's listen into what attendees at the memorial have shared.
觉得这个在描这个名字的时候，也是仿佛我在亲近我的这个祖母和祖父以及我的几个叔叔。今天我是有责任和义务将这段历史让更多的人去知道、去了解，让我们共同来守护和平。
不应该忘记这段屈辱的历史，我们应当铭记和平，努力学习，将来将祖国建设得更加富强，让悲剧不再重。
That's all we have time for. Keep watching News 6 World for more news updates from around the world.